Okay, in this next video, we're going to look at the Australian method for factorizing quadratics. Now, let's say, for instance, we have 20x squared minus 7x minus 3. Now, the first step in this Australian method is the same as the decomposition method. We're looking at our A coefficient and our C coefficient, and we have A equal to 20, C equal to 3, so magnitude of C, magnitude of A. Now, A times C is equal to 60. What are the factors of 60 that add to 7? So you would have 12 times by 5. We saw in the last video, 12 times by 5, it gives us 60, but it adds to 7. Now, with this Australian method, you would write it as 20x. So the coefficient in front of our first term. So we're writing effectively two sets of brackets. Each set of brackets will start out with 20x at the start, and we're putting the whole thing over that same coefficient of 20. Now we have our factors of 12 and 5. So negative 12 plus 5 will add to 7. So we go negative 12 plus 5. So our factors are getting added into these brackets. And we then factorize each one of these top brackets. So here we can see that there is a common factor of 4. So factorize 4 out of there. We'll be left with 5x minus 3. And then the second one, we'll be factorizing 5 out. So 5, and then we have 4x plus 1, all over 20. Now, what will happen is the stuff that you factorize out of the numerator will actually be equal to what's on the denominator. And so 4 times by 5 gives us 20. And so our factorized form is 5x minus 3, 4x plus 1. If I flick back to last lesson's page, when we were doing the same question via the decomposition method, we saw that the factors were 5x minus 3, 4x plus 1. So same answer. So let's look at another example that we went through via the decomposition method, and we will do it with the Australian method. So we had 3y squared minus 12y minus 36. So 3y squared minus 12y minus 36. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to factorize out a common factor at the start. So 3, leaving behind y squared minus 4y minus 12. Now, let's apply the Australian method for factorizing on this square set of brackets. So again, the first step is the same as the decomposition method. Your A times by C value. So A by C is 12, and the factors of 12 that add to 4 are going to be the same as what we used in the decomposition method as well. So our factors that we used was 6 and 2. So we have 6 times by 2 gives us 12. So negative 6 and a positive 2. Now, writing this in the Australian method, we have 1y at the front. So y minus, so we're going to have two sets of those brackets. And you're going to have y minus 6, y plus 2 will give us, so minus 6 plus 2 gives us that negative 4. And this is all over 1 because our coefficient in front of the y is 1. So in this one, we're just jumping straight to the end result. As you can see, it's the exact same result as the decomposition method. Let's do one more with the Australian method. So again, we did 2x squared minus 18x plus 28 in the decomposition method. Let's do this one again with the Australian method. Okay, so we're doing the first few steps exactly the same as the decomposition again. So we're factorizing out 2 from each thing. Left with x squared minus 9x plus 14. And the factors of 1 times by 14 that add to 9. And we saw that was 2 by 7. So -7 and a -2. And then we're just plugging these straight into the decomposition method. So our coefficient is 1. So we have 1x in each of these brackets. Now I'm just writing out the 1, just to try and make it a little bit clearer. But generally, if it's 1, you wouldn't write out 1. Now we had a -7 and a -2. So the factors -7 and -2, again, add to -9. And so we're just plugging that -7 and -2 into these top brackets. And so simplifying this, you have 2x minus 7, x minus 2. And that's the factorized form, which you can see is the same as what we got last time. Okay, I've got another quadratic equation here. So have a go at factorizing this using the Australian method. Pause the video here and I'll come back in a few seconds. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to give this a go. So first up, I can see that each term is even. So we can factorize out 2 to begin with, leaving x squared plus 5x plus 6 behind. And then we will factorize this middle section using the Australian method. So we have a coefficient of 1, so x all over 1, 2 out the front. And now what are our a times c values? So we have 1 times by 6 giving us 6, and then what are the factors of 6 that add to 5? And I believe we've already seen in this kind of question that 2 and 3 would go together. So +2 plus 3. And then simplifying this, we end up with 2 and then brackets x plus 2, x plus 3. Now, the downside to using this strategy is when we had something like this, remember 6 minus 1 also added to 5 and also fit the criteria. So with this method, you're just plugging in your values, and unless you go back and double check, you're not going to know whether or not you've got that correct lot of factors that's going to work. In terms of the decomposition method versus the Australian method, realistically, it doesn't matter what one you use. You tend to use whatever is easier for yourself. I personally like the decomposition method better because it explains what you're doing every step without really having to memorize the process. It's more just following the logical procedure. Next up, we have factorizing via completing the square.